Some students seem to have an almost unfair advantage. They sit the same exams, attend the same classes, read the same textbooks as everyone else, and they consistently walk away with distinctions while their peers scrape through. For decades, educators and parents assumed this was about intelligence or learning styles. Some children were simply wired differently. They had a gift. But what if that assumption has always been wrong? Today I want to tell you the story of where LAS came from, because it starts with a researcher who decided to find out what the best students were actually doing, and what he discovered changed the lives of thousands of students over the next 30 years. In 1996, a researcher completing his master's degree in neurolinguistic programming set out to answer a specific question. Not, why do some students fail? But, what specifically are the best students doing that the others aren't? That distinction matters. Most education research focuses on failure, what goes wrong, why students struggle, what interventions help at-risk learners. This research started from the opposite direction. Find the highest performers and reverse engineer what they do. Before we go further, what is NLP? Neuro-linguistic programming is a framework for understanding how the human mind processes experience, language, and behavior. Developed in the 1970s, it studies the relationship between how we think, how we communicate, and the patterns of behavior that result. In practical terms, it's a way of understanding not just what people do, but the internal process they use to do it. And in education, it offers a lens for understanding not just what students learn, but how they learn it. That lens was exactly what shaped what came next. With his research question in hand, the founder of LAS embarked on a journey with a deceptively simple premise. Find the top performers in each academic field and observe what they actually do. He traveled across the country, seeking out the highest achievers across a wide range of disciplines, the best spellers, students who seemed to understand mathematics intuitively, the fastest and most accurate readers, teenagers who could sit an exam on material they'd barely reviewed and still produce outstanding results. He didn't just look at what these students knew. He looked at the internal processes they were using, how they approached a new word, how they stored information, how they retrieved it under pressure. The question wasn't whether they were intelligent. The question was, what exactly are they doing inside their heads that the others aren't? What he found was both surprising and profound. Across every subject, every background, and every level of academic achievement, the top performers were using a consistent set of internal strategies. Not consciously, in most cases. They had developed these patterns naturally, often without being able to articulate what they were doing. But the patterns were there. Repeatable. Remarkably consistent. The best spellers weren't memorizing words through repetition. They were constructing vivid visual images of them, seeing the word clearly in their mind and reading the letters off that image. The top math students weren't grinding through formulas by rote. They were building conceptual pictures that made abstract relationships concrete. The students who could recall everything they read weren't rereading chapters 3 times. They were translating text into internal representations as they went, building mental films of the content that could be replayed. In short, the top students had strategies, and those strategies could be identified, documented, and taught. What followed the initial research was a period of refinement, testing, and real-world validation that few educational methods ever undergo. The founder took his compiled strategies to an educational institution and spent over 20 years working directly with students. All backgrounds, all ability levels, all subjects. The results were consistent and remarkable. Students who had previously been failing, who had been written off as slow learners or disengaged, began producing distinctions, not occasionally, consistently. Students who had spent years struggling with spelling could master new words in a single session using the visual strategy. Students who dreaded exams began approaching them with confidence because they now had a method that actually worked. When students applied the strategies correctly, distinctions weren't the exception. They became the expected outcome. And what made this especially compelling? The universality of the results. The strategies didn't work for one type of student, or one subject, or one cultural background. They worked regardless of what was being studied, regardless of the student's first language, regardless of prior academic performance, because the methodology is built not on content, but on the mechanics of how the human mind learns. And that's universal. Everything discovered through that research and refined across 2 decades of application is now encoded into the LAS app as the Learning Anything strategies. These aren't generic study tips. They are specific, step-by-step processes derived from what the best students actually do inside their minds. Let me give you a quick overview. The brain and mind. Understanding how memory actually works. Once students understand this, every other strategy makes sense. The spelling strategy. A visual anchoring method that encodes words into long-term memory. Students who use this rarely misspell a word twice. Building beliefs. Academic performance is inseparable from self-belief. This strategy uses a structured daily process to build genuine confidence grounded in real evidence. Reading and conceptualization. Most students read passively. Eyes move, nothing sticks. This strategy teaches active reading, building internal pictures from text so that information is encoded meaningfully and recalled easily. The understanding strategy. Confusion almost always traces back to one cause, a word the student doesn't truly understand. This strategy teaches students to find it, resolve it genuinely, and move forward. Virtual reading. An advanced combination of reading, conceptualization, and understanding, producing near total retention of complex texts. This is how the highest performing readers actually read. The TEATE method. Retrieval-based revision. Automated by the LAS Revision Master. How to learn anything, the capstone, all strategies combined into one complete, repeatable process for any subject. Once a student understands this system, no subject is beyond them. For too long, educational technology has focused on delivering content more efficiently. Better videos, more engaging exercises, gamified quizzes. But none of that addresses the fundamental problem. Most students have never been taught how to learn. They've been taught what to learn, the curriculum, the facts, the formulas. But the internal process of how to take new information and make it stick, how to understand something genuinely rather than superficially, how to walk into an exam with real confidence, these things are assumed to just happen. For most students, they don't. LAS doesn't just deliver content, it teaches students how to learn, and that changes everything. The methodology behind LAS is not theoretical. It is derived from real students, tested on real students, and proven over more than 20 years in a real institution. Every strategy in the app exists because someone, somewhere, was using it naturally to get distinctions. And the work of LAS is simply to make that available to every student, everywhere. Whether a student is struggling to pass or aiming for top marks, whether they're 8 years old or 18, the strategies work, because the way the human mind learns doesn't change depending on the subject or the student. The Learning Strategies section of the LAS app. strategies, animated guides, interactive exercises, is free to explore. No subscription required. Start with whichever strategy resonates most, or take the educational assessment to see which areas you need to focus on. Download the Learning Anything Strategies app for free from the Apple or Google stores. I'll see you in the next one.